All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Humble Hustle Project, a podcast that's working on finding the best version of ourselves each and every time. Continually figuring out and striving new ways, innovative stories where we can learn from one each other through consistent dialogue and cutting deep as much as we can, right? So I'm joined as always with my brother Devin. Appreciate you being here, man. Brett is off today, and we'll be back with him as soon as possible once we get our schedules figured out. But hope you're doing well, Brett, wherever you are. So today, really excited. We're going to be jumping into a conversation about values, where we place our values, what is our value system, how do we develop one, and how do we refine the one we may already have going. So, first I wanted to check in with you, Devin, see how you're doing. Love having you down here. Always good for a visit. Just having a little night on the town with you the other night was awesome too.
Yeah, it was chill, man. Yeah, brother. Honestly, man, I'm happy to be down here. It was good to see my nephew. Really good, reset and kind of reminder of why I'm doing the things I'm doing. I think this past week has just been kind of revealing in terms of what the next year and a half will be like. Kind of getting my mind right. And really, working with you and Brett on kind of polishing out how we can better develop the Humble Hustle Project for, the community of listeners who are out there, which, by the way, we are very grateful for. And, just chopping away, man,
Yes, sir.
Going. What about you, man? How you holding up?
I'm doing well, man. I'm excited. I'm in a course program right now that I'm working on in addition to work, maybe thinking about some career moves as well. Things are rocking and rolling, tense a little bit, but a good trouble, you know what I mean? Good trouble in the sense of, I think, pressure's building up so much so that change is imminent, and I both anxious about it but excited at the same time.
That's a good combination.
So yeah, that's kind of the general feel and mood for me right now. But let's hop into our topic today. We're talking about values, right? Mm-hmm. And so, real quick, a simple definition, right? What are values, right? So they're a person's principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what isn't important in life. And this kind of revolves around systems that we develop and, again, place, priority on what we hold dear, or, at the top of the list and what's at the bottom of the list. Mm-hmm. We might value, fiscal, money. We might put a high value on money, and maybe not such a high value on travel or something like that, or a high value on, social interactions, concerts, whatever it is, and maybe not a high value on reading, whatever your consumption is.
You poking at me, man? What's good?
Hey, we're gonna cut on some various topics. I don't think that would be. It's not a poke yet, but we gonna be cutting some places, but yeah, dude. So I wanted to talk about this conversation with you because that's something I'm constantly seeing with not only my family, not only myself, not only with students I work with, and just people I come across in life. I constantly find myself questioning in adversity, and this is part of humans. We are all uniquely different in where we place our value. This is kind of why I get excited about it, because I get fascinated with understanding why some people in my life place value on certain things.
Okay.
So much so that I'm like, man, that's wild, dog.
Give me an example.
I was just at an event the other day, and the idea of the event was that it was going to be a networking social gathering, but also a house party vibe. The flyer was if you're not dancing, don't come. And I get to this event, and sure, there's music playing, there was stuff going on, but I was sitting there and I was stunned, and nobody was dancing. Everyone was in their pods. I felt like the value people were placing was being there, and to say that they were there, rather than actually enjoying the experience itself.
Okay.
So there was lots of creative types there, whether it be photos, music, and it's not really my scene. I don't know how. Again, for those of you that don't know, I wear the same shirt and hat almost every other day.
Every other day.
I got no fashion sense, okay. but I'm telling you, when I rolled up there, I was like, okay, People out here flexing, bro. They got a whole fashion setup. You know, they really doing the thing. And I'm like, okay, enjoy yourself. But it almost felt like to me they were dressing up so much to the point where they couldn't dance or enjoy the purpose of the event.
Yeah.
But I say this back to our topic of where we place our value, because the value there that people were placing was that they were there, not that they were doing what the event was intended for. Okay. Does that make sense?
It definitely does. And like that was a picture back, I don't know, it was a couple of years ago, and it was within the picture was 3 different people, and the picture was focused on. Like there was a young lady who was really excited, who was like taping everything with her phone. It was an older gentleman, you could tell he was like maybe 40s, 50s, who was like you could tell he was trying to figure out how to use his phone. Yeah. And there was an older lady just sitting there, like with their arms over a banister that was in front of her, and she was just staring. Like she wasn't staring, but she was very present, right? Yeah. And it almost kind of speaks to what you're talking about now, right? Yeah. Just like where people place value based on who they are, where they come from, and it seems like what you're connecting the dots here, that the people who were at that event you were talking about valued more about like them.
The image.
Yeah.
They valued the image.
Go. Facts. There you go. Boom.
Yeah, they valued the image of what it looked like to be at that, and you know, maybe they were enjoying themselves to their fullest potential, but I mean I couldn't see it. I'm sorry, but you know, I also again might not be my type of crowd, right? So I guess that's what always fascinates me, is like understanding people's motives and value systems that drive those motives. Around that, because I get confused a lot of times, man.
Or like why people run like ultra marathons, 100-mile marathons for like God knows what reason. Like, you know what I mean? Like there are some people who do those things, or there are some people who paint because they, you know, like and it allows them to express their creativity. Like, or some people who model. Like the people's value systems are. It's always interesting to hear where people place their values, and it's also interesting to kind of identify whether our values are something that we're either conditioned or it's interesting to see and meet people when you can identify, or sometimes when you can tell that somebody's like values are conditioned. I'll give you a good example, right? If somebody values spending a lot of money on jewelry or the look of something, or a bag, for instance, that they know they can't afford because of the look, like where does that value come from? Because it's conditioned, right? And it's just, it makes you think like, all right, like I can tell that, like, or I don't know, I just kind of get worried, to be honest with you, but because it's like sometimes you see people who or you think like some people put like certain value on other things
that make you kind of turn your head.
Yeah, definitely, because it looks good. It's like you said, you know what I mean? But then identifying whether the values that we have ourselves are based on that, you know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna lie, bro, like I love nice cars, I love them. But I have a Toyota Corolla, and I love that car too. And because it gets me from A to B, and I remember what it felt like to sleep in my first car, my Honda Accord. Yeah. But like I love nice cars. I'm a sucker for Audi. Yeah. Right. I'm a sucker for all these really nice like luxury foreign type of cars. Right. But and if somebody were to see me in one of those cars, they may say exactly what I'm talking about here. You know, like, oh, you place value on that instead of other things. Yeah. You know what I mean? And discerning whether or not that's a value that I came up with, or one that I learned from conditioning, who I'm listening to, what I'm exposing myself to, what the people around me are kind of influencing me to like think of, like where my values are. That's such an interesting place to be. You know what I mean? I don't know, like, how do you, when you think of your values, what do you think, like, do you think they came from your conditioning, your environment, or were they things that you had to kind of like chip away at and like learn how to like define for yourself?
It's what I'm consuming, man, on a daily basis, like for years. And so again, one of my concerns is like, if the value that, you know, these young up and comers have is on stuff that's either, you know, potentially wasting their time. My biggest goal with something like this podcast is to help people figure out time to results, reduce that, right? Because I know how much the value of time. So much so that it concerns me that, like, man, dude, don't waste your time on that. Like, but then who am I? Who am I to tell somebody not to waste their time on something? But again, it's what people are consuming on a daily basis. Okay. And so
Completely agree.
For me, it's like, bro, maybe I'm playing too many video games. Maybe I'm watching too many movies. Well, maybe I'm just sitting on the couch scrolling on social media too much. Each one of these little things that, you know, for me, I mean, I love playing a video game, man. I grew up with my brother doing that thing, and that was something I find as an outlet. But when it comes to these other things, like where people just get lost, they just came out with a stat the other day that TikTok just passed Instagram as most time spent on app by users.
Bro.
Okay.
Man, I'm telling you, I remember when I first downloaded TikTok.
Yeah.
This is when I was living back in Oakland. I remember when I downloaded it, it was like 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Start scrolling. I'm like having such a good time. I'm laughing, looking at new videos. I look up, it's fucking 3 a.m. I'm like, yo, this is a problem. I deleted it that night, went to sleep. I was so mad. I was like, yo, if I don't delete this, I will sit there for hours and hours on end. And it's, that was, it was crazy because then you see a lot of these kids now, like, even young kids, right? We've all got nephews and nieces, right? We all see some of these young kids who are running around. They have tablets in their hand. They have phones, and they just scroll like all day long. So their attention is going just like where adults is. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like I can only imagine where their values are being placed based on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you're spending most of your day, you know, on this app, at some point it's going to start shaping your values. It's going to start defining them for you, where they originally came from your family, came from the who you spent the most time with. And if who you're spending the most time with is a device,
right?
That's one of my biggest concerns. Not that it's so much bad. Like, sure, if they're on there, like, man, I want to be able to find a way where we can bridge technology with good habits. There may not be a perfect solution to that. I think there's plenty of technology, you know, that is being worked on to help provide that. I think I was just looking at a company the other day, and what they do is they provide like a tailored experience for young kids online. Now it's a weird one because it's kind of like a censoring of what they see.
I mean, that's it. One could argue that that's almost needed right now when you look at everything like people are being exposed to. But that also, man, that I don't want to dive into that topic, but that would also lead into who has control over what these kids see, and then like the guiding hand of, you know, is you're giving them full control. Like, you know, what's to say the next step wouldn't be the state stepping in, or like somebody else stepping in to guide them if parents can't do it, right? Which is a whole different conversation within itself. But like, and I you know, just for me and on my closing thoughts of this, like, I understand that, like, I'm not a parent, and I know that there are people out there who, like, technology makes it a lot easier for their kids to be able to you know, kind of it relieves some of the challenges that come with taking care, or like, you know, kind of like giving their kids all this attention because they have other things going on, right? A lot of parents are trying to provide and take care of other things, but that, which also kind of like leans into where their values are, right? Their values are based on time and also like the monetary sense, only to be able to provide, right? Because they value the livelihood of their kid. They value like I'm trying to better their own lives. And this is definitely coming out of my ass. Anyone who can listen to me. So I'm just like, but I'm thinking, like, for me, I'm putting myself in their position in like a hypothetical sense. You know what I mean? But where do you place your value system?
Well, this is where I want to dive into this next conversation. Is I don't think there's a specific set of values that need to be. This is 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5.
I'm
right?
Same page.
I don't think that exists. However, what I think we should take away from this, and what I think people should approach their value system with, is almost being obsessive with it. Mean it. If it's part of your value system, mean it.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, here's a great example. Okay, I place great weight, massive weight on being able to tell somebody I love them.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You will never hear. I say it to 3 people. Okay. That's my mom. That's my brother, and that's my girl. Beyond that,
I'm just gonna confirm he's never told me he loves me. Okay,
yeah,
so.
yeah, facts, facts. I'm not playing.
I'm not either.
That's not a bad thing. This is my man's.
Yeah,
like I have love for him, but when I my value system for me has defined that when I say I love you to my loved one, like that's blood is my bond right there.
Cross
Like that,
my heart, hope to die type shit. Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
And so I guess one of the things I would love for people to maybe start approaching the value system with is giving it the gravity and weight it deserves.
You want people to fall on their sword, like
Yes.
of their values. And I commend that. I love that. If anything, I think it's almost kind of like a lost art, you know, like people who are people of their word, people of their values, right? Like one thing, like, you know, like one of the figures that I've always kind of like thought were really cool was samurai. Because of their sense of honor.
Their code, bro.
Yeah, bro. It's why I'm gonna get one of the tattoos I'm gonna get on my sleeve will be partial samurai.
Yeah.
Because it's something I identify with so much. And I think that people falling on their sword in terms of their values it can be like so powerful. And I think that people may have forgotten kind of what that looks like. You know what I mean? In a world where we've got millions of different influences coming from every other direction, right? It's very challenging to identify what that even means, right? It's like, and we could dive into a litany of different topics with this one, man. We really, really could. But I align myself with what you're saying in terms of like letting people, like very select people, know that you love them. I think the way I've always approached it, and see, for me, I'm operating out of a place of pain and fear in a sense. And I'll kind of explain why. When my dad passed away a couple years ago, it put me in a place where I couldn't imagine what happened with me and my father happening with other people. And for the listeners, one of the last conversations I had with my dad, we argued. We argued on Monday. By Wednesday, he was gone. So for me, it was like, and at the end of the argument, I said goodbye, Dad. I didn't even get to tell him, you know, I love you. So for me, that fucked me up, man. Yeah. Like it put me in such a place where I was like, I just want to be able to tell him, and so he knows. Yeah. And now the people that I love, the people that I care about, my friends, like I'm never afraid to just tell them, because I'm like, they need to understand that if I go tomorrow in an hour, the last thing they heard me say was, I love you. Because if I don't, it sits on my heart. You know what I mean? You know, being selective about it matters. And I think that when you say it to people, as long as you mean it with conviction, like, I think that's where we can like fall on our sword. You know what I mean? But I think, and it's just like, all I'm going to say, bro, is I think it's dope that you say it to 3 people. And I think that it's even better. I think it's even cooler that like you can identify those 3 people, right? Because it shows just how much you really align with that, like falling on your sword of those values. Like, yo, if I say this to you, understand this means death. Like not for, not like that, not like that. It's like,
yeah, man, that's it.
We going together.
Yeah.
It's either me or we out.
That's funny.
I mean, like, you know what I mean? But I think that's dope, bro. It speaks to you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, man.
Well, I think another point I love to bring to this is that I don't think it's set in stone.
Oh yeah, no.
So for example, like if you know you have a value. For me, is being able to say love. If you have a value that may change its priority in your life at different times. So for example, you know, at some point in your life, you might prioritize the financial because that's just what you need at that time.
Facts.
Like you need the cash. You need to make a move so that you have enough to afford your cost of livings and some and take care of your family, right? But like whereas you might have to sacrifice being able to work in your passion just at that time. There's all along the road there's places you got to sacrifice, and I think that with your value system, that's where I believe where we place our value. Give it the gravity, give it the weight it deserves, but don't be afraid to change your mind.
That is really, really good. There's a dope quote I love that aligns with that. And it says, have an artist's approach to your goals, but have an engineer's mindset when kind of attacking them. You know what I mean? And being so be kind of creative with them. Like be like water, like Bruce Lee used to say, right? Rest in peace to that guy. He's amazing. But be like water, be fluid, but when you need to be stern, right? And be like have that engineer's mindset. I think that's amazing. And so for everyone who missed me blabber, because it was kind of broken, have a artist's mindset when approaching your goals, and have a engineer's execution or attention to detail when executing on said goals, right? I think that being like that with our value system can be super, super, I don't know, valuable. that was yeah, that's shitty. That was about to slap you upside the head. Oh man, but yeah, man. I mean, even knowing where we place our values, you know what I mean? Like I remember what it felt like coming from a place of poverty, right? You understand what I mean? Like being in a place where your family's struggling and you see it every single day. Growing up, me personally, I learned to value money. And it wasn't because I think money is important, or the most important thing, but because I saw its importance in my life. And I saw how it affected every corner of my life. And it was only because we just didn't have money. And it doesn't mean we weren't like super happy. It doesn't mean like I wasn't in a house of love, but there was always a problem. There was always an issue. There was always, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I think, you know what I mean? Like, so for me, I value my time because I know my time is money, right? And it's a weird thing to even think about it like that. But I'm like, what are the things that you feel like defines where you're at and like your values? From like your childhood or your adolescence to like where you're at now? Like what are the things you feel like kind of guided your life because of that value?
Yeah, man. I think the things that kind of, you know, when it comes to hard work and diligence, I look to my mom. You know,
facts. Same.
Just kind of, you know, she's always been, but also, actually, you know what? One of the biggest lessons I've realized that developed my value system was being able to take a critical look at my upbringing and identify the characteristics that I want to hold on to and the ones I don't want nothing to do with. So, for example, you know, I look at my father, right? You know, I think generally a happy-go-lucky guy. And I'm not going to talk ill of my pops ever. But he had some tendencies while he was alive that created strife in the household. And I know, based on who he was and what he was doing, how he was operating, that all that does is create heartache, hardship, stress, anxiety, pain for everyone that he loved around him. Like he literally was the example of I am gonna hurt the people closest to me, and I was just like, come on, man, like come on. And so I say this because I don't think I've ever heard a bad story about my pops. Everyone loved him. I was like, man, okay, he was a charismatic dude, life of the party, dude, having a good time. But he was just that. He was the life of the party all the time. And so that ultimately spiraled into some characteristics that I found out about a little bit later on when my brother and my mom were like, all right, you're old enough to maybe deal with this. But for me, it was like, okay, I know exactly what kind of parts and characteristics of my father I want to hold on to dear and tight. But then I was like, man, there is these parts. Don't associate with me.
Yeah.
That is not a family gene. That is not a family characteristic. That is not something that's going to pass this generation, and I'm not going to pass on to the next one.
Right.
And so I do that with not only my family, but I do that with my friends. So I did that even when I was a young kid. I had a really hard time socializing with people. All I wanted to do would be people's friends, and everyone's like, Jake, just chill, bro. Like we don't need to be around you all the time. Just like I was very high energy, very like, why don't you want to hang out with me? I just want to kick it, bro.
Childhood, bro.
And, right, yeah. So I think we relate on this topic a lot too, because it was for me it was just like a matter of like I couldn't figure out why I couldn't relate with a lot of these peers of mine, which oftentimes ended up being because I lived in the apartments across the street. They lived in the mansions on the hills. They were not looking like me. They were coming from households where they'd leave school and go right to after school and their after school sports, whatever it was, while I was walking back across the street back to my crib, and locking the door and just like, again, locking in, playing video games until my mom got home with like those, what was those, TV dinners, man. What was it?
The Hungry Mans?
Not the Hungry Mans. There was another one. They came on a green box. It's like the pasta ones. If you know what I'm talking about, comment on this episode somewhere.
Yeah.
It's going to kill me if I don't know the name of it, but they had fire like Alfredo pasta. I know somebody out there has had this. So, but all to say, these are the different things that I've come to realize that, okay, there are certain characteristics that out of friendships, out of social interactions, out of people that I want to have in my life and the various influences I want to have, these are the things that I want. These are the things that I don't want. I don't want people. I don't want a circle that's only concerned with excluding people from events where that, oh my God, I don't know if I told this story. Yeah. When I was a kid, man, I went to this birthday party because it was a joint birthday party by these two guys. And one of them invited me. I wasn't really cool with the other one. I just kind of saw him around the way. Kid ultimately became one of my worst bullies I've ever had in middle school, but that's besides the point. So I showed up to the event because I got invited by one of them. The other kids came up to me and said, who invited you? Nobody invited you. I mean, again, this is kid stuff, so they're all emotional. Everybody's trying to cut deep, way too deep, bro. Middle schoolers cut so deep, bro. It's bad. But
no cap, bro. No cap.
So I show up and basically I'm like, oh man, like my bad, dude. And like a mom came up and saw that I was kind of having a hard time. She's like, what happened? I was like, oh, he just said I wasn't invited. And then she's like, oh, don't worry, you're invited by this kid. Have fun. They give out the little care birthday, what do you call it? The little
care packages, little birthday gifts.
Yeah, the things you get after attending the party. The
birthday favors.
Yeah. And so I grab mine. Everybody's opening theirs. There's a baseball card pack. I open mine. Lo and behold, I get the best card anyone ever gets at the party. It's a Ken Griffey Jr. cut jersey piece baseball card that has like a piece of his jersey in it. And I mean, Ken Griffey Jr. was the man. I'm not a huge baseball guy, but I knew Ken Griffey Jr. was the man. And I'm sitting there, man. And they're like, "Oh, Jake, no way!" And the kid who didn't invite me comes up to me. He's like, "Wow, dude, like you don't even deserve that. Like you weren't invited to the party."
Wow. The balls on this guy. Yo, I don't know who if that person's listening, but bro, you can pull it to my place, bro.
I carry no
I
ill
do.
wishes.
I carry it for you. You got me.
I carry no ill wishes, but I think it's a great learning story because then it came to me where I was like the value that I want in friendships, relationships, family, the value and the standards I need to hold myself to. So when it comes to things like exclusion, if you're in my circle or part of my circle or even an extension, if you bring somebody around, Devin, I don't need to know their life story, but because I trust you, it's a matter of like they're an extension of you. So we're good. We don't even gotta really question it. I'm not worried about it. And so that's the value I started to place on realizing that, man, this kid just had nothing. He didn't want nothing to do with me, dog. Yeah. And so I gave the kid the baseball card. And
you got a good heart, man. I'm telling you, you got a good heart, man.
And so I don't want no problems, bro. His family's on the boosters. Like,
Man.
bro, there's more to this story that it ultimately doesn't need to be said. But I didn't want no problems, and like a lot of the households we were raised in, we don't want no trouble. We don't want no issues. We place value on going to school, don't cause no problems, and make things work.
Yeah, definitely. Right?
Whereas if you read some books, about how people like to raise their children, they say there's actually a great value in teaching your child to question their environment constantly.
Oh, definitely. To question authority. To question like everything around them.
Right. And so these are the different values that as I'm growing, like, to what extent this, to what extent that, to what extent do I want to cause these wakes, to what extent I want to put value on the circles I want to be in. So these are just a couple different stories and examples of like what have shaped my value system.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think there's a cap on what things you can value. I don't think there's a limited number, nor do I think there's an explicit priority. It's the weight and gravity for me every time. But what about you, man? Like, when it comes to what has shaped you around some of your value systems?
I would definitely say my family. I would align myself a lot with what you've mentioned in terms of I would value great relationships now. I value my word now a lot more than I did before.
Yeah.
I value my family. Also value like time and experiences, right? Those things matter to me a lot more now. But the things that contribute to that were a lot of shitty situations. You know what I mean?
You gotta go through some things.
Yeah, man. Honestly, bro, I think that those are the good. Like, looking back now, it's really interesting because when you're going through, like, the tough times, you look at those and you're like, man, I don't want to, like, I wouldn't wish this on anyone because it sucks. You hate it. It hurts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you get out of it, like, we all have gotten through 100% of the toughest things in our life, right? So if that's the case,
hold on, before we go from that, explain that.
So, like, what I'm saying is, everyone has had a challenge or one or more challenges in their life that have made them question that current place and if they were capable of moving beyond it, if they could, like, go beyond that place, because they were just in a bad situation, but they got through it.
But you said 100% of our challenges.
We get through 100% of the hardest things.
Because why?
Like, that's a part of this journey, right? Like, there's a really good quote. I think it's Winston Churchill said it. If you're going through hell, keep going. Maybe it wasn't him. It doesn't matter, but the quote still stands the test of time. If you're going through hell, keep going. The same can be said with all these experiences you and I have had that have shaped our values.
Yeah.
If you're going through tough shit, don't stop in the middle of it so you can smell the shit. You keep going, right? You get through the shit. And I think that when we're going through those tough times, in that moment in time, it's like, dude, I don't want this on me. This is the most painful shit. But in hindsight, it's like, throw me back in that motherfucker. Like, I need to be, like, I want to be, I want the embers of those fires to make me harder. Like, I want to be tested more, right? It's almost like you crave it. It is like a warrior who craves battle, right? When you go through and you test yourself and you push yourself, the type of person you are on the other side of that, it's changed forever. The same can be said with the values that you and I developed. Because we were bullied, we appreciate the ability to stand up for others. We appreciate the strength of our own backside because we know what we're capable of if we see somebody who's getting bullied by someone else. Because we've been through it. We've been on the other side of that. Like, we appreciate what it is to have great friendships because we've been on the other side of shitty relationships, shitty friendships, people who don't appreciate you, people who don't value, people who take advantage of you. So when we have great friendships, we give ourselves wholly to them, right? So our value on some of those things, it comes from the pain that we've gone through, right? And I can definitely say the same for everyone else who's listening. But those don't happen. The good will never come without the bad. The rain is never as nice without the, the sunshine is never as nice without the rain. You know what I mean? And I think that like those things that we value so much, man, like the things that I went through when I was younger, I hated them. I hated being bullied so fucking much. I couldn't stand.
Do you think it's necessary?
To an extent.
I would almost argue, like, because I mean, we even connect with some of our friends on some of these topics where it's like, because I don't want to have a point where I think, because I don't think this needs to happen.
Okay.
I don't want to get to the point where I'm like, man, my kids got to go through, like, they got to eat dirt, to know what it means to be on the other end of this. And we were just having this conversation a little bit in some regards with some of the homies we were having, we were with the other night.
Shout out to brothers Mike and Leo from London. It was good.
But, I think we talk about how the men we are today and how the life we want to create. There's not really a way for us to replicate the things we're going through or the things that we've gone through in the same way that our children might. I think,
okay, that I would, that's going to be a kind of a point of like, we can go back and forth. And I'm saying that because we may not be able to give them the same experiences, the things that we had to, they're not going to be, the fires that created us are not going to be creating them. Right, because it's very different timing.
Yeah,
the experiences are going to be different. It's just for the things they're going through. But it doesn't mean we can't teach them our values. It doesn't mean we can't instill that based on our actions. Right, like for instance, this is this is gonna be funny. But I'm a comic book fan. I'm a big comic book fan, right? I love comic books. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I'm a sucker for it, bro. Like, that's why I like Marvel and DC movies. Because for me, like, when I was younger, one of the places of solace that I found was the library. My mom used to take us there when we didn't have anything else going on. We didn't have money to do anything else. And I would just sit there in the comic book section and just lose my mind. It was like one of my favorite things because my mind could wander. I was unchained to the bounds of this world, right? I could just kind of go. And we'll talk about, or I'll just bring up 3 characters who instilled in their kids the type of person they need to become without them going through the same fires that their parents went through.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of Bruce Wayne, which we all know to be Batman. I'm thinking of Clark Kent, which we all know to be Superman. And I'm thinking of T'Challa, which we all know to be Black Panther. Okay. Like, they had to go through their own trials, but their parents instilled to them as they were younger, as they were growing, the value that was there of a good person. Now, it could be argued that Bruce Wayne is a little off. He's definitely
almost an anti-hero.
Yeah, he's a
not
little,
really, but
yeah. I mean, he learned a lot of some of the lessons on his own, but his parents died at a young age. That's a whole different conversation. I don't even want to go into that.
I think that brings up a good point though, because like you said, we kind of there's no one moral like you could argue that in some ways they kind of have common value systems between those 3 superheroes, right? That ultimately that fire, that spark, whatever it was, you can't relate those 3. Like you can't relate how T'Challa got his spark as a prince in a very like sheltered country, how Clark Kent developed his moral compass and value system as
on a
being
farm,
and being an alien, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And Bruce Wayne, whose parents were murdered, and being an orphan,
and being a billionaire,
and a
zillionaire. Yeah, those are 3 completely different worlds.
That's a good point. So we never know what the spark may be, but the end value system will always persist.
And to kind of bring it full circle, the value system that you follow, like that if. So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that everyone in the world falls on the sword of their value system. The value system that you fall onto, your children will inherit. There's a really good quote that aligns like, what you do not fix, your kids will inherit. Yeah. And I wholeheartedly believe in that. And I'll say it again for the listeners. Yeah. What you do not fix, your children will inherit. So if you do not understand how to solve problems without getting violent, without losing your mind, without being even tempered, you know what I mean? Then your children will learn from that by watching what you do, right? Yeah. And the same can be said with a lot of things. But
it's the same story, bro. Yeah. When I look at my family, it's like you just summarize it perfectly, man. It's like I don't want to be this part of my dad. I do want to be this part of my dad. I don't want to be this part of my mom. I do want to be this part of my mom.
Oh, we aligned so well on this, bro. It's not even like
Yeah.
there are so many things about my father's past or just my father in general, just like my mother, that I'm like, I take pride in, the utmost pride. I'm like, I stand behind this. This is my lineage.
Yeah.
And there are other things I'm like, yeah, we're going to push that to the backside.
We gonna push that to the side. Man.
Ain't nobody got to know what that was.
Well, and I think we're coming to summarizing it up too. It was like we want to have this conversation in a way because again, driving results and cutting down time.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to figure this out when we're 50. We don't need to figure this out when we're 40, 30. We'd love to figure out as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a set time that needs to happen? No. We know plenty of people that figure this out when they're 60. Do I think it's the worst thing that ever happened to them? No, but it just means they had to go through a lot more trials and tribulation to figure out what that value system, what that moral compass was going to look like for them. So yeah, man, I think that I hope this sparked some ideas and thoughts for y'all, man.
Definitely.
I hope you found some value in the stories we shared, examples we shared, and we're gonna keep it rocking, man. We're gonna keep it rocking, keep it moving here. And that, yeah.
I think for anybody listening in, or just just the listeners, I really hope that everyone was able to identify whether the values that they hold close, whether those are things that you came up with directly or whether they're ones that like you inherited just by being around your family, right? Being able to decide what you want, what's important to you, and not that like those ever need to be changed based on this conversation, but at least being open to like going over them. You know what I mean? And because our values are really going to dictate how we move, our mindset. What we place in like the hierarchy of needs in our life.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. My last piece is those values. How much weight do you give them? How important are they to you? Because at that end of the day, man, you could say you value something, but if you ain't moving in that way, you ain't operating in that system, bro, what are you doing?
Big facts.
Right? So that's it, y'all. That's another one from us. Value systems. How much weight do you give it? Lean into it. Have a good one.
Deuces.
Deuces.
Oh my god. Oh, that was so perfect.
God.
You should have saw your face, bro. That shit was epic.
That was funny. Y'all wanna play with me, man?